And as he was leading us to pray, he touched the subject of the provision of a job for him and all of that, and we prayed. And as he was rounding off the prayers, he got so emotional and he broke down in tears right in front of everybody. That was the first time that I ever saw my dad cry. And it was in the place of prayer. It wasn't any other place. My dad is not a perfect example of, he's not a perfect person. But he showed me, number one, how to be vulnerable. And number two, he showed me how to carry burdens without complaining. Because he carried a lot, which time would fail me to explain. But he showed me, number one, to be vulnerable. Number two, to carry burdens without complaining. Thank you.
So, my dad is late, but I can say that my dad was a disciplinarian. And, while we were growing up, I remember several things, like we grew up having morning and evening devotion. And I grew up in a family where we treasure family meeting a lot. So I grew into that. And while we have meetings, my mom would talk, because my mom is choleric and sanguine. So she would talk and talk and talk and talk. And I pick my dad's nature. My dad is a melancholy and he doesn't talk much. And I think phlegm. Okay, so while my mom would do all the talking, so vivid, I would just remember two things that my dad used to say. He would, of course, talk to the women, and he would talk to us, the girls, and he would say, he would tell us how to sit, that when you sit all the time, you have to cross your legs. Don't just sit. Even when you're on short or you're in short dress or even on trouser, you must learn how to sit as a woman. So we're always conscious of that. Then also, my daddy doesn't like hoisting. In fact, it doesn't matter where you are going. Even if it's your Christmas clothes, you will have to go back home and go and change it to whatever that is available. It can't stand it for what, I don't know why, but it's one thing I, remember about my dad. And then it shows me that my dad is very neat and, is conscious of his look. Yes. And then also, I also remember my dad will always say something like, if you allow a guy to touch you and you become pregnant, you will move your things, that you have jeopardized your education and all of that. So it took me while I was growing up to know that it's not that kind of touch like this. So while I was growing up, I was always conscious. I don't really have male friends. Once you are coming around me to make friends with me, you're already a suspect. I don't want to even. So there are so many people that in a way, it didn't help me because I was too conscious. There are so many people that could add something to my life just for, being my friend. But because of that thing that was already put on my head, into my head, that when a guy come close to you and you become pregnant. So while I was growing up, it wasn't too much of the fear of God that make me, kept, but it was so much that I won't bring shame to my father, to my parents, and of course, shame to myself as well. So, and of course, I now know later on the reason why my daddy loved to keep dogs. We always have dog in my house. In fact, when people describe what they say, Ile Alaja, and of course, he doesn't joke with his girls at all. And I really treasure that about my dad. He doesn't talk too much. If my dad tells you he's going to give you 10 strokes of cane, you can be very sure that you will not miss the 10. And he will give you, if it's one palm, you will receive it on that same. If on your bum, if on your back, give me your back. So he's someone like that. And there was a time, let me just make you laugh. There's this, I think, it wasn't me or my elder sister that was sick. We didn't go to church. And so the brother came visiting. And we were just praying that our father shouldn't return from work at that point. But unfortunately, my father returned from work. My mom would just accommodate some of those things and realize that, okay, there's no way these children will get married one day. Let them even make friends with, But my daddy doesn't want to see anything male around, or he doesn't want to smell them. So when he came, it was like, who are you? That's the first question. Who are you? You are from where? And it was so, it was even bold to be responding and all of that, that I'm a brother from the near, that kind of way. It was the same. I don't ever want to see you in my house again. Now carry your Bible and whatever you came, that was where we now, okay, this man, so we grew up, and it wasn't really too good, because those training, we all received it. It shaped my growing up, but one of my sisters didn't really, because when you grow, when you, I don't know what to say, but let me not just bore you with that story. But the truth of the matter is, you must learn to be a balanced parent. You must learn to communicate well with them, because if you don't, you just raise children who are double standard, life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. So I think Pastor Mrs. already set the tone, right? So I want to talk about, or ask, this question will go to Minister Femi. So usually, particularly maybe in the African setting, we see the fathers doing a lot of providing, right? They do a lot of financial providing. And then somehow, subconsciously, they leave the setting of spiritual or religious values to the women. So while growing up, I used to see a lot of moms coming with the children. Then sometime during the service, the fathers walk into the church. At least it's a lot better in Fortress Church, right? But back then, that's how it used to be. So how do, apart from this kind of value system where you don't want the guys close to the house and all of those things, how do we actually, as fathers, build or inculcate spiritual values to our children? How do we give children spiritual leadership in such a way that it becomes a part and parcel of their life? They hold on to it as a conviction in such a way that whichever environment that they are, they never sway from those convictions.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that question. So, first things first, there is no way you can provide spiritual leadership to your child if you do not have a walk with the Lord. It's practically impossible. All right. It's just impossible. It cannot happen. That's why most fathers outsource that responsibility to the mother. And if the mother has a good walk with the Lord, then it balances out eventually. But that's not the standard. Scriptures instruct that the father should provide spiritual leadership over their home. So how should this happen? First and foremost, I think that fathers should realize that more than the money that you're providing. So beyond the money, right, there is a legacy that you're supposed to leave behind. And when you leave this world, all right, it's not the money that will keep your children in check. It's their conviction. And children need to have their conviction rooted in something. All right. I know you don't want them to disappoint you. You don't want them to do all of those things. But beyond you, all right, as a father, I'm not the locus of morality, all right? Because if my child observes me long enough, she or he will realize that I'm not perfect, all right? And so they realize that I'm a bit double standard, right? Because I say one thing and I do another thing. But if I'm able to show that child that I am not necessarily the locus of morality, there is someone else who is objectively good, all right? All in and out. I'm able to now point that child to God. All right, the relationship should start with me and the child, or you and your child, and then ultimately should lead to your child and God. But you cannot lead them to God if you do not have a walk with the Lord. So first things first, take the Lord a bit more seriously, read your Bible and pray. And as you do those things, your child can see you do those things, and eventually they begin to copy, because they learn more by emulation or by observation than by verbal instructions. I think I'll just stop there.
Thank you very much, sir. This question to PJ. Soma, if you have a list, let's call it the almighty formulas of value systems that you expect a father, or you would advise a father to pass across to their children, what would that list look like? So for example, perhaps PK's father now. I want to teach PK value. I want PK to perhaps pick up integrity, or so. What would be the first 3 values that you would wish that every father would hand over to their children?
Okay, so for me, Minister Femi just mentioned one, like you have to have a walk with God. It is very, very important. Have a walk with God, then have integrity. And then I also always teach my children about respect. It's very, very important. But the truth of the matter is, even as a father, you have to be their number one role model. You can't teach them about respect. You can't teach them about the fear of God. You can't teach them about integrity and the likes of them. And then they are not seeing you do some of those things or all of these things that you are teaching them, because children learn from your actions even more than what you say. You see them naturally, they pick some mannerism. It is natural for them to pick some of those things. Now you're teaching your children about respect, but you disrespect your wife in their presence. Even when you now settle with your wife, it's without them, which is not good enough, because you're not passing a good information across to them. When you do that, you must learn to be vulnerable in the presence of your children. When you apologize behind the scene, you must do it in their presence as well. Like I said some certain things that I was not supposed to say because I was hungry, and I've apologized to your mom. I just want to let you know that we have settled. Let them see how vulnerable you are. You maltreat your driver, you talk to people anyhow, and then you are teaching them about respect. And you always say that, so it doesn't work that way. You have to be the first person that they look up to. And so that's it for me.
Much more. So I like that. I mean, so like the most important thing is be an example. Everything that you want to see your child do, be an example of that thing. So you would not ask of your child what you have not modeled to your child, right? So I was never number one in my class, but I can ask that child to be number one in his class. But you get the point, right? Model what you would want your child, to look like, what the kind of characters and mannerism that you want them to display. All right, Minister Bassey. So in this era where there are, a lot of things, and particularly when it comes to the aspect of personal growth, how early should we start to, figure out what that child, particularly as a father, usually the moms are the ones who get to know these things. When you look at the mom, they say, File, this is what is happening. After a while, that child will, but when do we as fathers start to, pay attention to our children, to understand them, and then how do we start to help them achieve personal growth, in picking up? So like your dad helped you out, realize that you were better with typing than you were with speaking. So how do we get into that space where we help our children actually get into this space, and at what time should we start?
I would say from the start. So here's what I mean. As now, I think it was Mr. Fem that said something earlier. Children, you don't teach children only from what you say to them, but also from what they see you do, right? So you need to monitor the child from birth. How does he respond? Does he or she respond to things, to food? It's in the smallest and the minutest of things, right? How do they respond to this? How do they respond to that? And all of that. And in communication, we must know that it is not only in words. It's also, firstly, in the things we do. It is in how they see me as a father help their mothers out. It is in how they see me deliberately communicate love and affection both to them and to their mother. It is in how they see me treat people, like Pastor Jimmy said. I cannot, so at that moment probably they've not started understanding words, but they must see how I treat people who seem like subordinates to me. They must see how I walk confidently, right? They must see how I project confidence. They must, even as babies, they must see these things, because psychologists say that they begin to pick the kind of person they are from these things, right? So before they are able to start communicating and understanding the things you say, you will be shocked that they have started learning from the things you do. And that is how you actually begin to help shape on the person that they are. They must see you study the Bible. They must see you pray. They must see these things. They must see how you correct yourselves when you make mistakes, right? And if we watch social media, we see how that I saw a couple of videos where the baby was just there, couple of days, see the father when the mother was sweeping, help the mother raise the rug, help the mother position the seat, and you will see the child do the same thing. A baby, probably a year old, do the same thing when daddy is not around and mommy is sweeping. So it goes to say that the child is beginning to pick the kind of person he or she would be. And it may be too late when you think that it is when they start communicating that you start communicating to them, because now what you are doing is you are almost wanting to start correcting at that point, when it should be that you have started building. So you don't want to start your work as correcting, but as a builder.
All right, so the flip side to that question, which I would like that you answer, is, so for example, when it comes to building what we now call soft skills, for example, right, or any other skill set, how quickly should we know those things? I'll give you an example. I have a niece who likes, she likes books generally. She just would read books. If you put any book down, she wants to read, right? How do you, so it could be any other thing for any other child, depending on the child. How do you help that person or that child, improve on that level in such a way that the child grows, and then whichever parts the child wants to take on that, the child can take?
I'll first say that we intentionally create around that. The kind of environment, as much as what they watch, media content you allow, you expose them to, right? So a child like I said earlier, must be deliberate about monitoring the things that they respond to, and actually that's where it starts from. I was saying that that's where it actually starts from monitoring and noticing the things they are attracted to and respond to. And you just make that environment available to them. So you notice that the child responds more when it's things that has to do with books, academics. Get more books, get more educational materials, the program to watch. You see that they like the smart things. There are cartoons and children programs and books around that.
So it means that as fathers or as parents, we are more intentional about the environments that we build for our children. Eventually, that begins to make up for how they perceive things, their reaction to things, and how they grow. Thank you very much. All right, this is to Mr. Femi. So, sir, how do we build a strong self-identity and self-worth for our children? Particularly in this time where the internet is full of all kinds and sorts of things, right? Things that can make a man think he's a woman, or things that can make you think you are something else. How do I create in that child, whether a male or a female, a good sense of self-worth and identity, that nothing can shake that conviction of who that person is? And it's not just about the gender, it's about my self-worth. I go into a place, I don't have all the material things, but I have a good judgment of who I am. And so whether I see somebody with a superior material thing, I am not moved. How do I build a child to get into that space?
All right. First things is number one, right? Number one, what do you say to that child on a regular basis? What words do you communicate? So every time when your child puts on the dress that you bought for her or for him, compliment how that dress looks on him. "Oh, you look, this is beautiful, your haircut." Those words of affirmation actually go a very long way into determining and shaping that child's esteem. All right. Number 2 is be available. Because if the child hears something and comes back home, you need to be available such that you are the first port of call. Oh, somebody said this, somebody said that. And you are able to quickly correct what that person said and say, you know, that person is not important to you. We are the ones who love you. We are the ones who are important to you. And what we say to you should actually mean more to you. All right. And then we reemphasize those same words of affirmation again and again. The third thing and the final thing, which I would say on that matter, is, again, emulation is very key. As a father, you need to be careful the kind of conversations you have in presence of your child. If you're always looking for the next reigning handset, you want to get a new car, you and your friends are gisting, it's the next material thing you are always talking about. The child sees you, you are always looking for the next material thing to buy, the next material shoe, the next all of those things. You shape that child's mentality to think that their lives are controlled by the things that they have or the things that they do not have. All right. So those things are very important, and the child observes a lot. For example, nobody taught me how to present myself in public. It is these same things, all right? And you would be shocked how these things can go a long way in shaping the child's esteem and in preserving them from falling into error.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, the last question, because of time, we'll go to, okay, it's not a debate, sorry. Is okay, PJ. So recently, there's been this social epidemic where there's been a lot of reports of bullying, right? Children are going through bullying. So, that tells you that even children have mental health issues. All right, so how do we, or what would you advise we fathers to do, particularly with our children? Now, how do we check them to be sure that such a thing is not happening to them in school or any other place? Then when we find out that this is happening, how do we help them out? Usually we fathers, he was talking about affirming the children. I can almost promise you that that's not something fathers do often. If you have to do a research, I'm sure you see that mothers are more complimentary than fathers are. So, but in context like this, how do we come into that space? My child just went through bullying. How do I help the child apart from maybe beat up the person? Sorry, you didn't hear that. So how do I help him? I'm sorry. How do I help that child, get past that stage?
Thank you for that question. I want to say that you can't give what you don't have. And in a situation whereby you want to find out if your children are going through a sort of bullying or low self-esteem and all of that, you have to be involved in their lives. You have to be involved in their lives. And then, of course, there's a place of also exposing yourself to materials, informations that will also help you as a parent. We don't know it all. And the truth is, you can't give what you don't have. You may not love the way your father raised you, but if you're not doing something about it, if you're not deliberately exposing yourself to material that will help you build your child's confidence, self-esteem, self-worth, and all of that, you will just enter default mode. You would automatically raise your child the way your father raised you. You understand? So it is very important, and I feel that you should be involved in their lives. How do you know? There is nothing like, I don't know where they got that saying from, that if a child is bad, it's their mothers, and if their child turns out well, it's their fathers. I don't know where they got it from. You as a father, it's not just about you paying school fees. We have said this times without number. You have to be involved. Who says it's only mother that have to go to school and attend PTA meeting? Who says it's only mother that have to go? There's something that is called open day. You go and meet your children's teachers in school. You find out how they are doing, their responses to academics and all of that. And those feedback will also help you to know the areas that you need to work on. Because you can't just say, okay, because I'm paying millions of naira, then you leave everything to the teachers in school. And no, it doesn't work that way. So when they are doing their part, you also need to understand that you have a part to play. Then when you now realize that, okay, your child is not bold enough, is experiencing some sort of bullying or whatever in school, then you must learn how to approach it. Let them listen to them, let them talk, then let them know there are ways that you can go about these things. And it's not something that we can talk about now, but it's very, very important for you. You may not be 100% intelligent, but you have to be smart. You have to be smarter than these children. You give them your phones and you don't care what they do with the phone. They tell you, I want to go and do my assignment, I want to check some things on the phone. And then you don't go back to check some places. You know there are places they don't know that you can actually go to check what they've gone through, the materials and the things that they've exposed themselves to. They could even be asking questions about all of these things and you are not aware. So by the time you see all of those things, you may not even discuss with them. Why are you going through this thing? Why are you asking questions about sex? Why are you this and that? You already know. Like my husband and I are beginning to pay more attention to Theodore now that he's a teenager. So the discussion now is on a higher level. Now we talk more because he's displaying, he's showing some, so we are already aware that, okay, there's a place of, pressure group and the likes of them. So it is very, very important for you to pay attention to them, then to engage them in communication, then also expose yourself to material so that you can address these issues correctly. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ma. Okay, so I have questions here, but my time, no, not my time. The time is up. I'm a very religious man. Sorry? You have questions? Okay, my guy said I have 3 minutes, so let me use that 3 minutes. So let me quickly ask. This question, this one directed to PJ, I'll do that last. So let me direct this to Minister Bassey. I know Mr. Bassey is very good with children, right? He's a senior advocate for the boy child. Okay, so it says, how can children undo traumatizing parents? I got it right. Okay, how can children undo traumatizing parents? Their parents are traumatizing them. Their parents are the ones traumatized. So how?
I think we must do better as families, as individuals, because the child, there's nothing the child can do to help him or herself. So as an individual, what can I do as a person? Am I even equipped enough, not even financially now, mentally, psychologically, do I even know better? Do I know what to do as a person, as organizations, as people, say NGOs? Do we know what to do, right? Because every other day, we all can say every other day we see these boys downstairs, and a lot of us don't know what to do to help them. You come to Mile 12 and an average Mile 12 boy is a cultist. You go to Oshodi and an average Oshodi boy, and I say this with every sense of responsibility, an average Oshodi boy wants to be Oduomo. And we see these things, but we don't know what to do. We are hoping that somebody can do something, right? So it's that we must build ourselves, not just for ourselves and our families, but also for the society. So there's nothing the child can do. It is that there's something probably we as a people can do to help the child.
Thank you very much. All right, please, church, can you please help me celebrate our panelists? They have done great justice to the questions for today. Thank you, sirs. Thank you, Mars.